Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of JRNI Coaching.
We're super passionate about all things coaching and want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training over 1,000 life coaches.
Dive deep into a more meaningful career, find freedom, and make an impact on the world around you.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about dismantling ideas about money, how to make it, and what that means today. Noelle, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, I get one sip, so I'm going to do it now because if I'm doing it throughout the podcast, which I always do, it's rude.
You know, I'm incredibly jealous because we're out of coffee right now.
Oh,
and we had a miscommunication where I thought my husband was going to go get us cups of coffee while I took my meeting, and he thought I said I'm good. So I've been sitting here waiting for coffee that just never showed up. And
oh man, how are you functioning? I could feel the frustration. I could feel that just in the air because if I didn't,
yeah, a little cranky. It hurts.
Okay. You know what? I think that's fair. I mean, if I didn't have coffee, I don't even get up. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Well, we will power through, but enjoy your coffee on my behalf. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Let's talk about money. Let's talk about dismantling ideas about money. This is a great topic.
It is. It's timely. And folks might be wondering why we're talking about this on a podcast that has to do with everything life coaching. But one of the tom-toms that I've been beating for a really long time is that, enterprise, sharing goods, sharing services can exist outside of capitalism. And it has, in different communities, different parts of history for a very long time. And another piece of it is that what coaching focuses on is relationship building. It's soft skills, it's empathy, it's partnership, and relational currency, having relationships with other people as we march into our weird future out there is going to become, and I'm going to say it, more important than money.
Yeah, absolutely. Why did you hesitate? Did you think that you would get pushback or most people wouldn't agree with you?
I would say so.
Yeah.
And simply because we cannot escape the lens and frameworks that have been handed to us, that have been taught to us through social construction. Think about little kids. One of the number one questions that your daughter Logan is going to start to get is, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Right.
And so from your perspective, when adults ask that of children, what is the outcome that people are thinking about? I think that they're thinking about, how are you going to make money? What are you going to do?
Of course. How are you going to make more money? How are you going to make money while you're sleeping? I mean, it's just the world we live in. It's, capitalism.
It is. And what we're also seeing in the literature is that the pursuit of money doesn't give us all of the things that we need in order to be happy, whole, full, functioning people.
Yes, and I also feel like if you're pursuing meaning and passion and all of that stuff that we always talk about, things that are greater than self, the money comes. If you're pursuing just money, it usually doesn't come.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think we're seeing as just a radical awakening in society is people are not going back to work in the same way that they were previously.
Yeah.
And so, that begs the question of what are we doing with our time?
Yeah. And it's actually really exciting because that means that there's a new canvas to paint on. There's new opportunities. There's possibly a transition, new career for many.
Oh my goodness, 100%. So Harvard has been conducting the same study over and over and over again for 80 years. And the study is on health and aging. And I love that this institution has just kept at it for so long because 80 years is a lifespan, right? And what we've learned from the research that was published just recently is that our relationships, our close relationships, are actually what contribute to flourishing, happiness, and sustenance in our lives.
Mm,
And really specifically, when we have strong relationships and when we seek strong relationships instead of wealth with family, friends, community, the outcomes are that this delays our mental and physical decline. And the social ties, really specifically, are better predictors of life satisfaction and longevity than our social class, AKA how much money we have, our IQ, and genetics.
mm. Yeah, and you know what's challenging about this, I gotta say, is as adults, it's harder to make friends. We
Yes.
don't, it's not we don't have that kind of built-in structure we did as kids, where we were super social. There was recess, there was summer camp, and so establishing relationships, it's just much easier when we're kids. And then now that we're adults and we have all this pressure to build our empire, or provide, or whatever, the friendships, the relationships, they all kind of take a back seat.
They do. And you said something really important just now. There's all this pressure to build our empire and provide.
Hmm.
Do I have your permission to psychoanalyze that?
Yeah, of course, that's what we do.
It's cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'm modeling good coaching skills, listening deeply, mirroring back, asking permission, everyone. These are, ABCs of coaching.
Hmm.
So, what John just described is, I think, very emblematic of the American dream to build an empire, to provide.
Yeah.
And when we're thinking about money, when we're thinking about how do we make it, who is it for, what do we do? And if we're thinking about, oh my gosh, society has taught me all of the things that I think about money, I'd like to kind of unpack that pressure a little bit because it seems to come from the concept of the self made man.
Right.
When was the earliest that you remember feeling pressure to embody that really impossible and unfair ideal?
Not the pressure, but the introduction happened in the 80s, when our family came to America, and education was free, and the American dream, the whole building a life, on designer jeans and Coca-Cola, and all of that, and that was kind of injected into me, in the early 80s, when we first came to America, and that's kind of what success and the dream was. It was about having fancy things and making money and all of that.
Yeah. And when we see, those images presented to us from a consumer culture perspective, it's almost always a white dude, a
Yes.
heterosexual white dude who's
Yeah.
confident, who's industrious, who's very performative sexually, who's powerful. And those things, signify this kind of caricature that leaves a lot of people out of the possibilities of ever obtaining this stuff.
Yeah, and it puts a lot of pressure on men, because then it becomes like this, here's what a man looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how unfair, how terribly unfair. And then it has also, it leaves out folks who identify with gender differently. It leaves
Hmm.
out women. It leaves out folks who live in either rural areas where they can never access, the big city opportunities, or even urban folks who are just kind of trapped in systemic poverty. It doesn't take into account generational wealth, childcare,
Right.
and all of these real pieces of life are never represented in the idea that we have around what money is, what it takes to make money. Now that you're a successful grown up with a house and a kid, and very much um, could be said that you embody this ideal of the self-made man, how close is your lived reality day in and day out to that idea?
Oh, I don't think it's close at all. I mean, when I grew up, the successful person It was more of like the poster I saw was yes, a white man, briefcase, corner office, imported cars and this beautiful wife and that whole thing. Um, and today, when I look at my life, I don't see that. I see, like I'm not even married. I've got a kid. We're kind of you know living not in the city, but kind of, and just riding my motorcycle, creating content. I'm in sweats usually, and so it's not the manicured um, poster that I saw growing up of success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons why it's so important to unpack this and to hold this up and to have these conversations is much of the literature points to the fact that when we keep our head down and we strive for this ideal, what actually happens, and I think that this impacts men, families, communities in a really big way, is it creates barriers to true intimacy and to true connection.
Yes, it's very hard to be present. It's very hard to appreciate moments, whether it's with your child or watering your lawn or with a gas tank in between your legs. It just makes you chase, and so everything that you have, you feel like you could have more or you don't have enough.
Yeah, you said another thing that's really important there, and it's the idea of chasing, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that's so often in the context of our society a solitary task where we're doing ourselves, we're getting ours, right? And that cuts us off from relationships that can only be built when we're open and generous and thinking collectively of building a web of success, a web of generative relationships that feed each other versus a straight line and an isolated path.
Yeah. In my 20s, I used to think that friendships were a waste of time. I thought every moment that I had, I should be working toward uh, building something or making money, all of that. And I thought, friendships and travel, I thought was like, well, what's the point of that? You're wasting your time. You invest in that when you make it, to the top of the mountain, or when you become quote unquote successful. Then you travel, then you make friends. And today, obviously, I think something very different.
Yeah, and it's so important. I feel like we're kind of taking almost a time travel back, like looking at,
Hmm.
younger you who was on this path and also looking out into society and saying, "Oh my God, there are so many people who are struggling with feelings of not measuring up to an impossible ideal, struggling with feelings of isolation because if I only check these boxes, then I will get to experience
Right,
inclusion. Then
right.
I will get to experience happiness." What would you tell your younger self?
To throw away that checklist. Yeah, that was me. That was me trying to check boxes. I needed the beautiful wife, or I needed the expensive car, or the house, or the three picture deal. Back when I was screenwriting, and because none of that came, I was unhappy. I didn't allow myself to be happy, and I hit pause on life. Like I wasn't actually living. I was just frantically, spinning in my little hamster wheel, trying to find success.
Yeah, and you're not alone. There's a survey that came out in 2018 that was put out by Cigna, and this is pre-pandemic. And so I think it's really important to measure the research that came out pre-pandemic and talk about what's happened post-pandemic. And in 2018, this survey found that one quarter of the folks who live in the United States don't feel that there is literally anyone in their life who understands them. And half of the people in the United States report that they have meaningful interactions with other people each day.
Wow.
Those statistics are staggering.
Yeah.
That half of the people who live in this huge country do not feel that they're able to have meaningful interactions with other people every day. And now looking at the the separation and isolation that was forced as a result of the pandemic, it's even worse.
Mm.
And this setup, I strongly believe is killing us as a society, because toxic individualism, as you've kind of described with what you went through in your 20s, is really emotionally draining. And then it also really impacts people from a health perspective, and those things aren't brought up that much. So loneliness, just being lonely, increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, and dementia. And people who say that they're lonely are likely to be depressed 5 years later, and lonely people become more hostile towards others.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think part of my anger when I used to be angry was yeah, loneliness. Absolutely, I didn't have friends. I was just kind of by myself, running, toward running up the mountain. Um, and yeah, I felt very alone. And it wasn't until like around 35, 36 that I started to make an effort to do things that were more meaningful, and stop chasing the shine, and build relationships, and seek nectar, and truly like live and be grateful.
So when you were doing that, when you were in that state of transitioning your value set from one of acquisition to living, was it conscious? Did what was your relationship, and how did you relate to money at that time?
What do you mean? Was it conscious?
Like when you were transitioning and saying, I need to do something differently, and you started to move over towards relationships and friends and really living, was it a conscious shift? Did you say, I'm going to put money aside, or did it just kind of happen because you were struggling?
No, it was conscious, but I got help from the universe. The first thing that happened was the universe threw me into nonprofit, and so in nonprofit, you don't make much money, but the work is very meaningful. And so
Mm.
I got to see in front of me, okay, here I am. I have enough money to eat and pay the bills, but that's pretty much it. I'm not going to be taking exotic trips or anything, but I'm doing meaningful work. And I realized in 5 years of doing that, the meaningful work was so important, and that's what got me through. It wasn't the fancy dinners that I was missing. It was working with these kids and connecting with real people and all of that. And so I realized, oh, money's great, but if I just have enough to pay the bills, if I could build a meaningful career, and I'm working in a way that's honest to me, and it feels enriching and empowering, that's to me, that's gonna be what's valuable ultimately.
Thank you for sharing that. And, one of the reasons why I wanted to hit on this topic today, as we've kind of been talking about the last couple of podcasts, is as coaches, we need to know what most people are going through so that we can turn our services, our wisdom, our content into a position of service for that which is, truly hurting us. There's a book that came out in 2020. It's called The Lonely Century. And that book talks about how, it used to be just the pursuit of capitalism that was causing this, hyper focused masculinity, push towards money. And now it's also social media,
Hmm.
cyberbullying, which is just rampant right now with cancel culture, people stuck to their phones instead of engaging, the way that contemporary employment works, where everybody feels lonely at work. And then there's the gig economy, side hustles, where people have insecure incomes and there's not companionship or support. And this is happening in real time. And we're watching our communities, our families, and our friends just, drowning in mass urbanization.
Yeah, yeah, and I gotta say also, even though I struggle with this less, I still struggle with it. It's I think it's so deeply rooted. Uh, yeah, on paper, I think that I am okay, or successful, but I still feel like I'm lacking. I need more. I fear that I'm gonna run out of money. Like all these things that are not true, but they're still ingrained because it's just a world that we live in.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and your heart is starting to sink because you very much relate to this, or you see your clients struggling with this, one of the things that we talk about often at JRNI is hate the system, not the human.
Mm,
And when we pull back and say, this is not a reality of humanity, it doesn't have to be this way. We can choose new systems. A system loses its power if we don't feed into it, if we don't buy into it. And I think context is important. So, just an idea to close out on, and maybe you and I can daydream a little bit about what a different world could look like and how we get there. But if the history of human existence was squeezed into one single day, the Industrial Revolution didn't take place until midnight.
mm,
And
yeah,
so for almost 24 hours of the whole of human existence, humans lived in small groups as hunters and gatherers,
right.
and that's who we are as a species. So what do you think that we need to do as leaders and coaches to return to that?
Yeah, and I gotta say that's a personal question, and everyone's answer may be different. So if you're listening to this, ask yourself that question: what do you need to do to maybe go back to the basics, to not get caught up in, the society's trap of what success looks like, or how much money you should have, or even as far as coaching, what makes a coach successful? Maybe it's time to redefine some of those things.
Yeah, and I would say, if you're looking for something, the do it now mentality, what can I do now? Eye contact and hugs.
I love it.
Eye contact and hugs will give you more of a chemical boost towards connection, than any amount of currency ever could.
Yeah, more human.
More human.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. I hope this episode was helpful in some way, or challenged, your thinking in some way. Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to jrni.co/everything to explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a strong community to do it in. We created JRNI Coaching to equip you with the tools, training, and community you need to attain your goals.
Join JRNI Coaching and begin your journey towards personal freedom and a transformative state of growth today. That's jrni.co/everything.